They arrived early to stake out their territory with improvised barricades. By mid-morning, their numbers were swelling.
Well, they're bringing up reinforcements and supplies up to where the police line is, just over there.
Their objectives were twofold. First, to keep lawmakers out of the Legislative Council building to prevent the passage of the controversial extradition bill.
If we let this extradition law pass, we will no longer have any citizen rights, any freedom of speech. Look at China. They're suffering from the freedom. They're suffering from the government.
And second, to hold the same streets in central Hong Kong occupied by the umbrella movement 5 years ago. Those protests achieved almost nothing. Today, the mood feels more radical.
We should fight for what we should have.
So are you saying that peaceful protest is over?
There's no more, there shouldn't be any peaceful protest.
It's not working.
We are already having peaceful protests here, but it's no longer working.
Police attempts to keep order seem half-hearted at first. Emboldened, the protesters push their barriers all the way up to the gates of the Legislative Council building, known as LegCo. One or two get hit with a nasty squirt of pepper spray. That stuff stings. But it's not going to deter these people. By midday, a massive crowd has effectively occupied the streets. The protesters had succeeded in keeping most of the legislators out of LegCo. But we managed to get in. In an upper corridor, we met Charles Mock, who supports the protesters. Down on the streets, meanwhile, it looked like it was suddenly kicking off. The demonstrators were trying to storm the building.
Well, the protesters seem to be breaking in from two different sides here, and the police have completely retreated back away from the main entrance and back into the building itself.
I don't want to see this kind of conflict happen, but I think the government simply disappeared. This is totally irresponsible.
This is also, though, irresponsible, isn't it? I mean, these people are using violence to storm the Legislative Council.
I think the reality is we have no choice. A lot of people here in Hong Kong see that we have no choice.
We went downstairs, where the police had effectively barricaded themselves inside the building.
I don't know what's going on. It's extremely chaotic. The protesters have basically broken through the outer perimeter. This is the inner perimeter where the police are holding out. They've grabbed some of the protesters, but at the moment it looks like the police are being pushed back.
Thank you.
An officer lies injured on the floor. He's apparently unconscious. And if being charged by protesters wasn't enough, the police now incur the wrath of the legislators.
This is ridiculous. How can the police take over your parliament building? That's what they're doing right now.
But the protesters' attempt to storm LegCo was a turning point. Out on the streets, the police were fighting back. By mid-afternoon, they'd chased the demonstrators away from LegCo, and they weren't stopping there.
Well, the police are trying to drive the protesters back bit by bit using tear gas. You saw that being fired right now. The air is thick with it. It's hard to breathe without one of these on. And they've really made inroads. All of this was occupied by the protesters earlier. ago, umbrellas were a symbol of hope here. They occupied this place for nearly 3 months and nothing changed. So now the umbrellas have become a symbol of defiance and of physical defense against the tear gas from the police.
The protesters' attempt to occupy central Hong Kong was ending in retreat.
The last time this happened, they were here for nearly 3 months. The police are clearly determined not to allow that to happen again.
The authorities won the battle today. But these images will do little to calm fears that Hong Kong is starting to look increasingly like mainland China.
Remarkable scenes. Well, Gabriel joins us now from Hong Kong. Gabriel, where does this protest go from here then?
Well, Mark, the street that you see behind me just a few hours ago was a sea of protesters. And now, as you can see, there's just a few cleaners tidying up, clearing up the helmets, the gas masks, the umbrellas, and a few odd policemen. So what a turnaround and what a difference from 5 years ago when the umbrella protesters occupied this for 79 days straight. Clearly, the police weren't going to allow that to happen. But the fact that the protesters aren't here right now does not mean that they've gone away. These people, many of them very young, lots of them school children. What we found, and you saw in that piece, was anger. People are angry and worried about where this city is going. And I don't think that anger is going to go away. I think we are likely to see more protests, and probably quite soon. Now, in terms of the bill, that's a different question. The protesters did manage to get the reading cancelled today, so it didn't go through. But the authorities here are going to press ahead with it. They say they're determined to, and they'll probably pass the law by the end of the month. Now, to be fair to them, they say there are safeguards in place, that the Hong Kong chief executive has to approve any extraditions. It has to go through the Hong Kong legal process. But the protesters say, look, the relationship between Beijing and Hong Kong is not a relationship of equals. And if Beijing wants to extradite someone hard enough, it will be very hard for the authorities here to resist. And that, they say, is a huge chip off the block of the arrangement of one country, two systems, which is the system that Britain and China agreed in 1997, or rather in the 1980s under Thatcher, and signed in 1997 during the handover. And many people here feel that Britain in particular made a promise to them, a promise to try to uphold that system, one country, two systems, and that's a promise that they are not now fulfilling.
Gabriel, thank you. Well, we're joined now by Ambassador Liu Xiaoming, who's been Chinese ambassador to the UK since 2009, quite a period. Ambassador, let's start off with the joint declaration, that treaty between the two countries. Is China still committed to upholding it?
We are upholding the principle of one country, two systems. This promise has been made not only to Britain, but to the world, to the Chinese people and the people including people including those in Hong Kong. The joint declaration has completed its mission after Hong Kong handover, and now I think the one country, two systems has been successful in Hong Kong.
You say it's completed its mission, and I want to put to you something your foreign ministry spokesman, Liu Kang, said 2 years ago this summer, pretty much this time. He said that the declaration no longer has any realistic meaning. It's a purely historic document.
I think it's a historic document. It completed the mission to ensure smooth handover.
So it's
of
irrelevant
Hong Kong.
now?
It's relevant in that it set a good example for the international community to settle a dispute between nations by peaceful means. So it is still a shining, successful example for people to follow. But that declaration gives the British government no sovereignty, no right, no any legitimacy to interfere into the internal affairs of Hong Kong.
Well,
Hong Kong
no sovereignty, that's clear. That's what ended in 1997.
Yes.
But still an interest and a feeling on the part of hundreds of thousands of people in Hong Kong that Britain has a duty to protect their rights under the terms of that promise?
The British government have a duty to protect your own citizens, but not the people of Hong Kong. The citizens of Hong Kong people, they are part of China now, Hong Kong, and according to basic law, Hong Kong people will run their own affairs, and they are entitled to implement their social system different from the mainland. But it has nothing to do with the British government.
But I'm sure you can see, putting the British government to one side now, just the feelings of the people in Hong Kong. Hundreds of thousands, some people say 10% of the entire population have come out on the streets. A nerve has been touched that Beijing is not respecting their right to a separate system, a separate judicial system.
That's not correct. I think the whole story has been distorted. This case is about to rectify the deficiencies, plug the loopholes of the existing legal system.
Who's distorting this, do you think?
The media.
In Hong Kong or us? Or?
No, including BBC, I think. You portrayed the story as the Hong Kong government made this amendment and the instruction of the Beijing government. As a matter of fact, Beijing, the central government gave no instruction, no order about the making amendment. This amendment was initiated by the Hong Kong government. It's prompted by a murder case happened in Taiwan, and this
would you advise the Hong Kong government then to drop it? Given how controversial.
Controversial. Why should we ask them to drop?
Because you can see what people, even legislators there. One man said, "You're beating the people out of Hong Kong," to the police. That's the scenes we're seeing in the territory now as a result of this attempt to change the law.
But you have to remember, at the very beginning, it has been peaceful demonstration, but it became ugly afterwards. Policeman was beaten. And the police have to defend themselves. They have to put an order in place. So you can't blame policemen. I think that also always the forces inside, outside Hong Kong try to take advantage of things to stir up trouble. Let me come back to this.
But this is a domestic grassroots movement of people in Hong Kong.
But it had been exaggerated to 1 million. As a matter of fact, according to police account, it's about 200,000 people. But you ignore 800,000 people who sign up to support the amendment. This silent majority has not been fully reported in this country by the BBC.
Well, you're making the case now.
And also the Hong Kong government invites the Hong Kong public for suggestions, for opinion, and they received 4,500 written reply. 3,000 support the amendment. Only 1,500 oppose amendment.
What effect? Sorry, but I will just want to move on to one or two other issues. What effect do you think it has on people in Hong Kong when they see treatment of Uyghurs, for example, in the eastern region of Xinjiang? An estimated 1 million people, Muslim minority citizens, in re-education camps.
I don't know where you get this 1 million people.
It's a UN estimate.
I don't think it's UN have any report on this. There are education center, training center. It's for help the people who have been brainwashed by extremists to return to society, to return and to earn their living, to train them with the skill, language, and the knowledge of legal, so they can protect their own interests.
Can we have access? Can we see what's going on? Because a lot of people
we invited the journalists and the diplomats to visit the center.
We keep hearing reports that what happens in there is an assault on their Muslim faith.
No, that's completely wrong.
That they're forced to eat pork, that they're prevented from praying, that they're told it's a backward religion.
This is all distortion. This is all made up news, fake news, I would say. People are respected.
We're getting it through
they are
reliable
respected
sources.
for their freedom of religion. the people are entitled to have their religion. And the people, the important thing, you miss the big picture, is the reason for this center is to educate those young people who have been, intoxicated by the extremist ideas. And ever since these measures, there have been no extremist, violent incident in Xinjiang for the past 3 years.
No,
that means these measures have been successful.
I think anyone would understand why you might want de-radicalization or to prevent terrorist acts. I think that's a cause that you might have in common with many other governments or societies around the world. But what we hear persistent reports of is a very large number of people, up to 1 million, involved in this re-education process, which sounds frankly sinister.
I don't think where you get this number, 1 million.
What would your estimate be?
It's difficult to calculate the number because there's a going, coming in, going out. It's a number changed from time to time. But the important thing you have to focus on, the purpose of this center is not, to round up people. The purpose is to help these young people to have a better life after, education and training.
And you're saying that the purpose is not to eradicate Islam as a religion among those people, that is not the aim of this exercise?
No, not at all.
Huawei. It's a big subject, and I'm sure for you, in your post in London, it's something you care a lot about. The British government has been in a position where it seemed to make an interim decision on advice to use some elements of Huawei's technology in its 5G network. Now, as you know, quite a bit of pressure from the United States not to do so at all. Will there be consequences, do you think, from a Chinese point of view, if Britain decides not to use it at all?
First of all, I would say Huawei is a good company, is a leader in 5G. They are here for win-win cooperation with the British counterparts, and they contribute tremendously, not only to telecom industry in this country. They employ 7,000 people, and also I think in terms of win-win collaboration, if UK collaborate with Huawei, there'll be promising future for both sides.
They've got advanced technology, no doubt about it, but what if the UK chooses not to?
I think it will send a very bad message, not only to Huawei, but also to Chinese businesses, why the UK will remain open, well, UK will be still business-friendly environment for Chinese company. It will send a very bad signal.
Negative effects on trade.
Yes, bad, yes, not only on trade, but also on investment. For the past 5 years, the investment from China exceed the total investment in the previous 30 years. So Chinese investment are booming in this country. Even last year, increased by 14%. But if you shut the door for Huawei, it will send very bad and negative message to other Chinese businesses.
On that note, Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us.